Hey everyone, I'm Bradley and welcome to Zlangle. I saw Dark Phoenix. Okay, I'll talk about it. This movie didn't exactly make a lot of money at the box office so far, so I'm guessing not a lot of you probably even saw it. So you either saw it and want to see what I think, or you didn't see it, heard it was atrocious, and just want to hear me rant about how bad it was. Well, you might be a bit surprised then, because I actually didn't think it was the worst thing ever? Now, wait a second, hear me out. I have really liked a lot of the X-Men films through the years. Yes, there have been a few that weren't the best, but I have generally enjoyed the series overall, even if the continuity makes no sense. But with Dark Phoenix, I had a lot of apprehension in the months leading up to the release. Then again, the original release was supposed to be back in 2018, so I guess I've actually had apprehension since even before these first look images came out in 2017. So, needless to say, I've had a lot of time to ponder how this film and the future of the X-Men universe would turn out. But of course, then Disney acquired 20th Century Fox, so it became clear that this would be the final proper X-Men movie in this continuity. Kevin Feige said that it would be a while until they got around to doing the X-Men in the MCU, and I'm actually alright with that. I'm actually more impatient for a well-done Fantastic Four, but with the X-Men, there are plenty of other MCU properties that I want them to start or continue before they burst open the X-Universe and mutants begin taking over the foreseeable future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now that Disney has them back, there's no rush to introduce them in my opinion. But anyway, that got me thinking about how this movie, Dark Phoenix, would end the series that has been running for 19 years, since the year 2000. Would it be a great send-off? Or would it be a disappointing whimper? Well, I think somehow it ended up being both. In a way, I think it actually did tie up some loose ends, and had a bit of closure with the characters we've been watching for a while now. Especially the younger cast that was introduced in First Class. Like near the end, where Charles and Eric are sitting down to play chess again. I like that. Mystique's death, because Jennifer Lawrence hasn't cared about this role in years. So it was great to see her get killed off. Though we wouldn't have seen her anyway due to Disney, but hey, it was something. As a side note, I do actually really like Jennifer Lawrence as an actress, but just not in this role as Mystique. Just thought I should clarify. I enjoyed seeing the young versions of the characters again that were introduced in Apocalypse, like Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler. I was hoping to see Jubilee, however.
Hi, I'm Jubilee. I became a student at Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and everything changed.
Thanks, Jubilee. You were right. Xavier's totally rad.
But it all boils down to, was it a good film? Not exactly. But at the same time, the first thing I said walking out of the theater was, I kept waiting for it to get bad. For me, there is a moment in most movies I think are bad, where it hits you that it's all downhill after that point, that this film is not going to give you an enjoyable experience. But in Dark Phoenix, there were several times where I thought, here we go, when I thought it was about to go from mediocre to absolute train wreck. But that moment never came. It continued being somewhat enjoyable, the acting was actually really good, the special effects were much better than I expected, and I had fun while watching it. Now, I should clarify, I don't think this was an incredible film by any means, but knowing how bad it could have been, my extremely low expectations, feeling like I was finally back in the X-Men world, definitely unlike how I felt during Apocalypse, and nice nods to the comic books, altogether helped me feel satisfied at the end of it. But, that being said, I'm very excited to see what Marvel will do with the X-Men going forward. So, realizing that we were seeing this incarnation of Xavier's school and the rest of the characters for the last time was a bit bittersweet. I've grown up watching these films. That being said, while it's not the worst movie, I think it officially put the final nail in the coffin for the franchise, even without Disney buying Fox. Sure, you might assume that the fact that everyone knew this story was not continuing after Dark Phoenix might have affected the box office negatively. And that may be true. But I think even if the Fox's X-Men franchise were planning on carrying on like normal, I still think this movie would fail at the box office, and probably even bring this series to a close anyway, even though, spoiler alert, Jean Grey dies at the end, leaving room for a sequel for her to come back. But we've seen that happen before, and it didn't get a sequel. But this universe, over the years, have screwed up the timeline, character continuity, narrative threads, and any true resemblance of a cohesive universe. So I think it was on a bit of a downward spiral anyway. That's probably why they started shifting over to more diverse, self-contained stories like Legion, The Gifted, The Wolverine, Deadpool, and Logan. It seemed to work better for them to have a single, focused creative vision, rather than half trying and fully failing, to make a film that is supposed to conform to and exist within a previously sporadic, poorly thought out, long-running series of films made by completely different people, with completely different visions, with a studio that is constantly wanting to change and renew what the series is about, and the characters that should have been used to tell those stories. Well, I went off on a bit of a rant there at the end, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. The X-Men film franchise has had many ups and downs through the couple decades it's been around, and while they always managed to put out great films, they've constantly been held back by a lack of a grand scope vision for the universe and stories they intend on telling. So while this beloved universe is finally coming to an end, though there is technically one film left to come out, they decided to end their series on a story that's already been attempted with a poor result, being re-attempted by the same guy who wrote the previous failure, who's never directed a thing in his life by the way, and doing it with versions of classic characters we've only seen once so far in this interpretation as relatively insignificant side characters who didn't have much of an effect on that story, and expecting the audience to have closure for other major characters who have changed in essence and age as many times as there are films in the series, and closing the saga on a film that doesn't even have the name of the franchise in the title while focusing on a single character instead of the team as a whole, which is how all this began in the first place and what made the X-Men a household name to begin with. But, in the end, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Oh, and thank you Simon Kinberg for finally debuting Dazzler. It only took nearly 40 years for her to show up on screen for the first time. Anyway, enough said, and Excelsior.